Hello everyone, this is my college essay from my Homeland Security class, and it is about responding to the mass casualty incidents. Incidents, whether accidental or purposeful, cause panic among humans. When big number of people are injured or killed, then this event is called mass casualty incident. According to PowerPhone, the mass casualty incident process includes the search and rescue component in finding the injured victims and getting them evacuated to a safe area, as well as dealing with the elements that caused the incident. Incidents can occupy smaller places, like residential or business buildings, schools, theaters, or similar, or they can occupy a large area, like those devastated by earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, etc. These incidents furthermore present a significant risk also for people who are trying to help and save lives. These people are called first responders, and they are medical personnel, EMT, police officers, firefighters, and other specially trained personnel. In areas affected by natural disasters, where it often happens that military personnel are sent to help and rescue people and service animals as well. People who are commanding in such incidents have to be familiar with types of incidents and are that way to provide experts and prevent new losses. Incidents can be naturally caused, like earthquakes, tornadoes, or hurricanes, or they can be caused by human activity. Human activity can include hate crimes, such as random shooting or planned terrorist attacks, or it can be accidentally made mistake, like in case when dams break or train derailment, for example. In each of these incidents, commanders need to know how to deploy personnel in order to mitigate consequences and recover incident location as soon as possible so normal life activity can continue. Hospitals with trained medical personnel and experts, proper medication, and enough equipment are very important and crucial in helping injured people to survive. Also, recovery centers and volunteers are much helpful and appreciated in this kind of unpleasant events. Mass casualty incidents always pose a significant risk for first responders. In case of natural disasters, like hurricane, which takes a few days, responders are risking their lives to save people from affected areas even before hurricane completely passes that certain area. In case of terrorist attack, responders are sent to incident location without being sure 100% the terrorists are not going to continue with their activity. On OSHA.gov website, useful information and explanation can be found about potential risks related to this type of incidents. Quote, "The Occupational Safety and Health Act requires employers to comply with hazard-specific safety and health standards. Secondary explosive devices are bombs placed on the scene of an ongoing emergency response that are intended to cause casualties among responders. Secondary explosive devices are designed to explode after a primary explosion or other major emergency response event has attract a large number of responders to the scene to inflict additional injury, damage, or fear. Typically, these devices will be hidden in out-of-view locations or camouflaged by placing the devices in ordinary objects such as vehicles, flashlights, briefcases, flower pots, or garbage cans. Usually, the devices are detonated by a time delay, although radio-controlled devices or cell phones activated devices could also be used. That can be one of the most hazards that first responders face at mass casualty sites. Another hazard can be air or water contaminated with chemicals used in terrorist attacks, for example, or contaminated water in case of big flood in areas affected by hurricane. As a consequence of earthquake, air can be polluted not only with dust containing harmful particles, but with smoke as well, if earthquake causes fire. Clean air and enough amount of oxygen are the most important for human survival. Therefore, a lack of clean air and oxygen pose huge risk for responders. Triage is the process of quickly examining patients who are taken to hospitals in order to decide which one are the most seriously ill and must be treated first. Therefore, the triage is both important and necessary at mass casualty incidents. As stated in a national survey on EMS preparedness for disaster and mass casualty incidents response, embarrassing fact is that 42% of EMS practitioners say they are never required to receive training or disaster response. 47% say they receive training once a year. 11% say they receive training 2 or more times a year. The same article stated that, quote, major disasters are sudden, calamitous events that seriously disrupt the functioning of a community or society and cause human, material, or economic or environmental losses that exceed the community's ability to cope using its own resources. Hence, all 100% of responders must be mandatory trained in order to mitigate human losses and help others and themselves fast and the best possible way. When it's about identifying specific training that should be included in the response protocols for first responders, I would recommend that all responders, medical, police, fire department personnel, need to be trained for secondary device recognition. On OSHA.gov website, we can find more information about this issue. Quote, health and safety plans should include protocols for responding to a terrorist event, recognizing the possibility that secondary explosive device may be used at the scene. According to the U.S. Force Administration, some guidelines are recommended for responders. First, anticipate the presence of a secondary device at any suspicious incident. Second, search for a secondary device before moving into the incident area. Third, avoid touching or moving anything that may conceal an explosive device. 4. Effectively manage the scene with boundaries, exclusion zones, triage areas, etc. 5. Evacuate victims and non-essential personnel as quickly as possible. 6. Preserve the scene as much as possible for evidence collection and crime investigation. Following are examples of disasters and the subsequent mass casualty event it triggered in which safety protocols were insufficient or absent entirely. In last few decades, modern technology develops fast and implementation of artificial intelligence contribute a lot to improving living conditions and saving human lives. Still, mistakes happen, especially when procedures are not followed and disastrous consequences occur. One of the biggest risk factors in communication is communication failure, whether the disaster is man-made or natural. Vanderbilt University has conducted research related to this topic and published it in its magazine in 2008. Hurricane Katrina is one of biggest disasters that happened in recent history in 2005. Not only that it was mass casualty event where about 2,000 people were killed, but thousands of people were displaced and also economic loss was more than $120 billion. Researcher from Vanderbilt University stated in his article that, quote, numerous failures of the city's flood protection system due to poor design and construction, deferred maintenance, and a lack of funding left New Orleans vulnerable. As the city filled with water, insufficient emergency planning and preparedness, and the inability to responders to communicate compounded the hurricane's effects. Moreover, drilling for fossil fuels and engineering of the Mississippi River had destroyed wetlands that could have buffered the storm's surge. Another disaster is an example of how insufficient funds caused by lack of understanding and poor communication preventing scientists to focus on real threat. As a consequence, eruption of Mountain St. Helens volcano caused mass casualties. In the same article, researchers stated the following. Before 1980, concerns about Mount St. Helens and other peaks within the Cascade Range had caused the United States Geological Survey to request additional funding for volcano monitoring and hazard studies. But when these requests were unfulfilled, the agency focused its limited resources on Hawaiian volcanoes, which were thought to present a greater threat. Available monitoring technology was not able to predict the type, magnitude, or affected areas of an eruption, leaving geologists unaware that a massive explosion was about to take place. Third example would be worldwide known September 11 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center in New York and Pentagon as a man-made disaster. Unfortunately, these disasters is the most embarrassing since modern technology was the most developed to prevent any of similar activities, but lack of communication between CIA and FBI actually helped terrorists to fulfill their mission. Over decades, a lot of intelligence was gathered, but unfortunately, most assumed threats were taken for granted. The amount of data shared between the intelligence community and law enforcement about some individuals and groups who could possibly harm citizens had been very limited, hence their failure in full cooperation caused inability to counter the attacks before it happened. September 11 appeared to be a needle in the public eye for a long time. Therefore, Christensen, 2007, explained the following, quote, "In August 2001, the CIA informed the FBI that 2 suspects in the attack of the USS Cole had entered the United States. The FBI's New York field office required authority from headquarters for a full investigation. The request was denied because of reluctance to base a criminal investigation on intelligence information. The FBI had counterterrorism task force, as did CIA and the DIA. But the different priorities and methods between the communities and the reluctance to communicate prevented them from combining their efforts against terrorism. In order to avoid similar mistakes that have happened in the past, some improvements can be made by analyzing and neutralizing past failures and their consequences. Better communication, open personnel trainings, and more open sharing of data among all agencies responsible for our safety, whether it is about natural or man-made disasters, as well as sharing of knowledgeable experts, have to exist at all times." References. Thank you for watching my video, and thank you for supporting my channel. If you like it, please subscribe, and I will upload more similar essays. I hope this will be helpful for you in the future. Thank you.